President Donald Trump on Thursday removed his 40% tariffs on Brazilian food products, including beef, coffee, cocoa and fruits. Now remember, these tariffs were imposed in July to punish Brazil over the prosecution of its former president and also Trump ally Jair Bolsonaro. Here's a look at this report.
U.S. President Donald Trump on Thursday removed his 40% tariffs on Brazilian food products. That includes levies on beef, coffee, and fruits that were imposed in July to punish Brazil over the prosecution of its former president and Trump ally Jair Bolsonaro. The order will affect Brazilian imports to the U.S. on or after November 13 and may also require a refund of the duties collected on those goods while the tariffs were still being charged, according to the text of the order released by the White House. The move follows a similar order by the administration last Friday to remove tariffs on several agricultural products from other countries. That's as the White House reverses course on measures that have driven up the cost of food in the U.S., which is a major factor behind Trump's declining approval ratings. Brazil has recently become an important supplier of beef to the U.S. and normally supplies a third of the coffee used in the country. Retail coffee prices in the U.S., the world's largest coffee drinker, rose as much as 40% this year due to the tariffs and other market factors. Trump's executive order on Thursday did not mention the actions against Brazilian authorities involved in the prosecution and conviction of Bolsonaro for plotting a coup to remain in power after losing the 2022 election. Brazil's President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva welcomed the removal of the tariffs.
Today, I am happy because President Trump has already begun to reduce some of the tariffs that had been imposed on certain Brazilian products.
And now, viewers, the dispute between U.S. President Donald Trump and Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene has now fueled concerns that Trump's Make America Great Again base could fracture just a year before Americans go to the polls for midterm elections. Remember, this is when Democrats are hoping to regain control of the Congress. Take a look at this report.
This meeting of Republicans in Lafayette, Georgia, is deep within the district that elected U.S. Representative Marjorie Taylor Greene.
Under God, indivisible.
Her recent break with President Donald Trump over the Epstein files was the elephant in the room at the gathering, and local party chair Jackie Harling chose to address the issue head-on.
We love President Trump, and we love our Congresswoman. And there seems to be a little bit of trouble brewing.
People took turns voicing their worries about the deepening rift and its potential impact on the MAGA movement.
It's not pretty, and it hurts my feelings, it hurts my heart to watch our Congresswoman knowing firsthand how hard she works for us.
Fears of a fracture within the Make America Great Again movement are coming a year before midterm elections, when Democrats hope to regain control of Congress. Trump and his staff lobbied hard for months to prevent further release of files from the investigation by the Justice Department into sex offender Jeffrey Epstein, who was, for a time, friends with Trump. He reversed his stance only after a House petition gathered enough support to force a vote on the matter, but not before Trump withdrew his endorsement of Greene.
I was called a traitor by a man that I fought for 6 years for. And I gave him my loyalty for free. I won my first election without his endorsement, beating 8 men in a primary. And I've never owed him anything.
Trump signaled he'd support a Republican challenger for her in elections next year, but Harling says she's not sure that would play out in Trump's favor.
I don't think going on The View makes you a Democrat. I don't think that saying some positive words about Nancy Pelosi makes you a Democrat. I don't. We're Southern women. Sometimes we say nice things when we really want to say not nice things. And I don't think that, I have not been presented with anything that Marjorie has done that makes me question my faith in her.
The break between Trump and a MAGA loyalist like Greene is rare. But Kerwin Swint, a political science professor at Georgia's Kennesaw State University, agrees that Greene is likely to survive politically.
I think if you look at the timeline of when all this happened, it began around May or June. And that's around the time that my sources tell me Trump President Trump told her, look, you're not going to get elected to the Senate in Georgia. You're not going to get elected governor in Georgia. You need to stand down. In her district, a lot of Republicans in the 14th district worship the ground she walks on. They think she's a fighter. She's a hero for them, for the populist movement, America First. Also, she's got a huge bank account, campaign bank account. She's got incredible name ID. And so it would be hard for any Republican to beat her, I think. Not impossible, but hard.
The clash over Epstein has had a wider impact on Trump's public approval. It fell to the lowest point of his second term so far in the most recent Reuters Ipsos poll. That poll found just 44% of Republicans thought Trump was handling the situation well, and 70% of Americans overall believed the government was hiding information about people involved in Epstein's sex crimes.
And now moving on, the U.S. is looking at a possible action such as sanctions and Pentagon engagement on counter-terrorism as part of the plan to compel the Nigerian government to better protect Christian communities and their religious freedom. Take a look at this report.
The United States is considering measures such as sanctions and Pentagon engagement on counterterrorism to compel the Nigerian government to better protect Christian communities and religious freedom. That's according to a senior U.S. State Department official on Thursday. Nigeria is under scrutiny from U.S. President Donald Trump, who in early November threatened military action over the treatment of Christians in the country. Here's Jonathan Pratt, who leads the State Department's Bureau of African Affairs, speaking at the House of Representatives Foreign Affairs Committee.
The Trump administration is developing a plan to incentivize and compel the Nigerian government to better protect Christian communities and improve religious freedom. This plan will consider U.S. state and Treasury engagement on sanctions, as well as possible Department of War engagement on counterterrorism and other efforts to protect religious communities.
In October, Trump added Nigeria back to a countries of particular concern list. The CPC list is a tally of nations that the U.S. says have violated religious freedom. He said he had asked the Defense Department to prepare for possible fast military action in Nigeria if it fails to crack down on the killing of Christians, and said he was halting all aid and assistance to the country. Nigeria, which is home to 200 ethnic groups practicing Christianity, Islam, and traditional religions, says claims that Christians face persecution misrepresent a complex security situation and do not take into account efforts to safeguard religious freedom. The country has experienced periodic violence, often linked to ethnic divisions and conflict over scarce resources. The extremist Islamist armed group Boko Haram has also terrorized northeastern Nigeria, an insurgency that has killed tens of thousands of people over the past 15 years. Yet human rights experts have said that more Muslims have been killed by Boko Haram than Christians. Nigerian President Bola Tinubu sent a delegation to Washington on Wednesday to meet Trump administration officials and U.S. lawmakers.
And now Germany is moving to treat the use of date rape drugs on par with using a weapon. This is in a major push to strengthen laws around sexual assault and domestic violence, which is rising in the country. Now, Interior Minister announced a proposal calling it a necessary step to ensure justice for women and girls. Minister said that the use of such drugs has become a widespread tool in crimes, adding that reclassifying them as weapons could now pave way for much stricter prosecution as well as punishment in such cases. He stressed that women must be able to feel safe and move freely everywhere. Remember, let's take a look at the record that Germany has. Germany recorded nearly 54,000 female victims of sexual offences in the year 2024. This is a 2.1% rise from the previous year. Of these, 36% were victims of rape or sexual assault. In fact, a parliamentary debate on a bill proposing mandatory minimum 5-year jail term for using date rape drugs was postponed just last month. The government is now intensifying efforts to combat domestic violence, which overwhelmingly affects women. Police recorded almost 266,000 domestic violence victims in 2024. This is a 3.8% increase from the last year. Now, to strengthen protection, the German cabinet has also approved electronic ankle monitors to track domestic violence offenders, a linked warning device for victims notifying them when an offender is nearby, and also funding for a new app that allows victims to secretly document abuse for court use. Now viewers, these reforms aim to create tougher laws, better monitoring and a stronger support for survivors of abuse and sexual violence in the country. And now Japanese Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi's cabinet has now approved a 21.3 trillion yen, which equals to about $135.40 billion economic stimulus package on Friday. Now this marks the first major policy initiative under the newly elected leader, who has pledged to pursue expansionary fiscal measures. Take a look at this report.
Japan's ruling cabinet approved a massive $135.4 billion stimulus package on Friday. It's the first major policy move under new Prime Minister Sanae Takaichi. She had pledged to push for more ambitious fiscal measures before her election. The package includes general account outlays of just under $113 billion, well above the previous year's figure. It also marks the largest stimulus since the pandemic and includes $17.2 billion in tax cuts. But markets have grown more concerned about the country's fiscal position and Takaichi's stimulus plans. The yen has hit 10-month lows, while super long government bond yields have seen record highs. Takaichi stressed the package fully takes into account fiscal sustainability. She said funding will come from higher than expected tax revenues and non-tax income, and also said any remaining shortfall will be covered by issuing additional government bonds. Sources said the size of the bond issuance has still to be finalised, but they added it's expected to be larger than the $42.6 billion of last year. The Cabinet plans to approve a supplementary budget to fund the package as early as next week. It also aims to gain parliamentary approval by the end of the year.